Hello, everybody. Welcome to Silent Podcast, the place where everything but silent. I'm your host, Isaiah, and we are back with a exit interview with Dickson Wong. Dixon, how are you doing, man?
Oh, just living the dream, watching me get eliminated again as if in person was enough. So being able to see it on TV, I guess, was cool.
Well, we're very happy to have you here. I know Julia, Cheyenne, and myself, and our other co-host, Katie, we just had a great time seeing you, and we just have a couple questions. Julia, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I know Isaiah and Shayna and I were so excited to hear that we got to interview you today, even though we were super sad that, you couldn't win the game. But first of all, just want to say that, I am really appreciative that you were on the show as, Asian American representation.
Oh,
I'm sure that you probably, I don't know if there were any other Asian American interviewers in your exit press. And so I think it's just really important. So just want to hear a bit more, what did it mean for you to be an Asian American contestant on Deal or No Deal Island? And just thank you for sharing your story, your vulnerability. I really resonated with your story, and so just thank you.
oh my gosh, I really appreciate you saying this. This is the first time someone asked me this. I've done I think
Wow.
15 different interviews today or something. And I want to first by saying thank you for having me on here. To answer your question, Julia, it was so cool. You're talking about the American Chinese part. The first thing I want to start with is casting. Okay. When we get there, I see CK. And do you guys watch Survivor, Big Brother, and stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So they usually only cast one Asian. And as soon as I saw CK, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not guaranteed a spot. That's what I thought right away. I was like, there's no way they're casting both of us. But they ended up casting us, and I thought it was really cool to play with another Asian. The one thing, me and CK, we said, and I don't know if it was 100%. We said we wouldn't take out another Asian. I will say that. We both said that to each other. I mean, again, I am also a lot more cutthroat, I feel like, than CK is. But and then to answer your question too, I think my experience on there as an American Chinese representative, it was really, really cool being able to experience it. But the only thing that I didn't like about it was the fact that a lot of, and I'm not going to say all of them, but some of my castmates that I had, and I won't name them, they thought I was just going around telling people sob stories about my life, how I grew up. And it's this isn't a sob story, guys. This is a blessing in disguise. I might not speak in English right now if it wasn't for my American heritage, my American grandparents. And for me, I just want to make that clear, across all platforms that, and, I'm so thankful for the life that I have. Being, and you can relate to me too, Julia. Were you adopted or?
No, I'm not adopted. But I'm a child of immigrant parents, so I felt like what you had said about your birth parents really resonated.
Yeah, and I'm really glad, like I said, that you brought it up, because for me it wasn't a sob story. Everything I said, it's not a story to feel bad for Dickson. It's a story to feel happy for Dickson, because I got a better business. Like I said, I celebrate so many American values, and I take pride in saying that I'm an American citizen. I'm so thankful for my American family, and everything I've done. Because like I said, I might not even be speaking English right now if it wasn't for them. So, but other than that, I love hopefully representing the Chinese American Asian demographic well.
I think what's so cool is that we don't just see people who are like you, or we don't see people who are PK. You guys are just so interesting. You guys are just like any other ordinary person with just awesome stories. And I think I definitely don't think either of you guys were a stereotype, and I thought that was so important.
The one thing I will say though is, I have so much respect for my other castmates. I don't talk to them personally that much because I'm really busy. I do work 40+ hours a week. I help take care of my elderly grandma sometimes. And then on top of that, I'm also getting my master's degree. So, I'm not able to fly out and see people as much as other people can see each other. But with CK though, going back to the whole thing, I probably talk to CK at least once a week. So CK is someone I'm in touch with. And I'm very glad you asked that question, Julia, about representing the Asian demographic. And
I can't believe no one asked you that question. To me, it just seems so obvious. And actually, Isaiah and Cheyenne had to encourage me to ask that
Yeah.
question. So I'm really grateful you guys did. I just last question before we jump to Cheyenne. Like I'm so grateful that like you and CK are still in touch. But like in the game, you just said that neither of you guys were going to take each other out, but it did seem like very close that CK was coming after you and maybe you're coming after her. So could you get a little bit more into what your relationship was with CK in the game?
Yeah, I think me and CK, I know I have the family alliance. She wasn't necessarily in that 100%, but I would say, like, in terms of to describe our relationship, it's like a brother-sister relationship. The edit can't show everything. Whenever CK grabbed my ring, don't get me wrong, I was ticked off. I was like, why would you freaking do that? But at the end, I gave her a hug still. Like, I hugged her. I said, hey, it's all, all fair in love and war. I hugged her for that. When I didn't take out CK, it's because the edit doesn't show that the domes are working together. So since CK was in my red dome, we worked together. The yellow dome worked together. The blue dome worked together. So whenever I was up for elimination, possibly when it was me and Seychelles, I didn't think CK would take me out because CK was telling Parvati she wasn't going to take me out. Now, I will say one thing, though. CK, she can be emotional at times, sometimes. So I knew it was best to keep my mouth shut still because sometimes I do have a tendency to say something that might tick people off. And she could have thrown a vote on me at the end, but I didn't think I was going home with that whatsoever. So, and then same thing with her. She knew I wasn't going to take her out. Like, the entire time she's like saying, why would you take me out? Like, blah, 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 blah. And, I didn't tell CK who I was taking out, but I told CK, just chill. Just chill. That's all you got to do. Just chill. So,
Yeah, I agree with Julia 100% that the two of you were truly chosen for, I think, for who you are. There was no stereotypes to be seen. I know that a lot of us who have a background in watching Survivor, if you think of a strong Asian player, especially, we think Yul, we think
right.
Can't name another man is the problem there.
I think Ty was a great player.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I think he was a good Survivor player. Ty from Brains versus Bronze versus Beauties, and then not second chances.
Shout out to Derek X too.
Yeah, Derek X too from Big Brother. I love.
Was he strong?
I thought Derek X was a good player in Big Brother.
Yeah,
I thought he was.
Okay, so I guess to kind of move forward into the rest of the season, you were in the alliance of the season, like obviously the family, minus MG, but you did get a very underdog edit where it made it seem like you were a bit delusional. Like, do you think that you had a good read on the cast and during the season, or do you think that do you think you had a good read on the season?
So I think I had a good read overall, but the one thing I will say that the edit doesn't show is that I burned a lot of bridges before I played the temple. I was going around trying to make as many alliances as possible. And the one thing I will say is, like, when you're at home, you're like, oh, why would they do that? Why would they do that? But when you're on the actual island, the game is so slow because you don't have a phone to speed up time. You don't watch TV. And all I wanted to do was talk game. And I said in a confessional that they didn't air that I'm playing this game way too hard. I'm making way too many alliances, which is a reason why I faced the banker, because I didn't know where I stood in the pack. I am making all these deals. One thing that I was told was that whenever I was throwing my axe in the challenge, Dr. Will asked everyone in the group who has the final two with Dickson, and everyone raised their hand. So for me, I didn't know where I stood in that sense, but once the game got, we got further into the game, that's when I got more of a grasp of like who's working with who, what alliances are like actually true and stuff like that. So
that's amazing. Speaking of Dr. Will, how did you feel about him coming in over that boat? Like, did you recognize him instantly? Were you like, why is he here? Do you think he was a guest host?
I didn't know. Well, I figured he was in the game. The one thing I will say about Dr. Will, though, is I've never watched his original season of Big Brother, the one he won. I do know he won the game, and I do know that he never won a challenge and that he was more of a strategic and social threat. compared to a physical threat. So for me, having Dr. Will there, the players I was more worried about was the physical players in this game. I don't know if you guys watched season 1 or not, but the final challenge is a physical challenge. So for me, anyone that came in physical, now if you had someone like, trying to think of some, like Caleb from Survivor and Big Brother, Caleb Reynolds, if you had him come, I would be scared to death because that guy is a challenge monster. But having Dr. Will, I wasn't too worried about it. My exchange with Dr. Will on the island is really interesting. So, he's the one that caught on. I was playing a lot of angles, but I was still trying to salvage a relationship with him as much as I could. I figured that was another bridge I burned, but you have the one conversation, the none of your business one, I walked into that, and I knew why he was calling me a weasel, but I tried my best to salvage any relationship that I possibly could with him.
So if you were really concerned about the physical threats, and by the way, you did pull one of the biggest moves by getting Storm out. I don't think anyone expected that. But also, like, David is such a physical threat. So, like, when were you going to turn on David?
My ideal goal to turn on David was in the final 5. I mean, I know I can't prove that now because I am out of the game. But it goes back to not having relationships before. A lot of people in the game wanted me to turn on the family. They kept saying, Dickson, you're at the bottom of that. They're going to take you out. They don't even like you. And figuratively, I knew I was at the bottom of it. But at the same time, these are the only people that would work with me in the game. And the final.
I'm sorry, but that's crazy.
Well, yeah.
To say that Parv and David don't like you?
Well, yeah, they kept saying that they're only using me, yada, yada. But it's like I wasn't winning challenges. I didn't have any power in the game. But, it goes back to them trying to get me to turn on them. But it didn't make sense for me to turn on them when I had no allies to go to. Now, let's say in the situation that I had more bridges up, and Letty was willing to work with me. Philip was willing to work with me. And I had another alliance to go to. I would have turned on them immediately if I could, because I know how dangerous. Well, I mean, I didn't know David was an Australian Survivor player, but I did know how dangerous of a threat he would be physically. Parvati, on the other hand, I told Parvati to her face, and I didn't mean to. It was not an outie thought. But I did tell Parvati that I would beat her in a challenge, which is why I wasn't worried about you. And I told her that. And again, it was supposed to be an any thought. It wasn't supposed to be an outie, but it came out. So, like, honestly, I probably wouldn't have turned on Parvati. I was fine with taking her to the end. But David, I would have went for at 5. But I would have turned my back on them if I had an alliance to go to. Like, I wasn't winning challenges in the game. And it's like, you got to have, and I understand it's not Survivor and it's not Big Brother, but you still have to have a few people to look out for you. And I didn't have that. And I think an example of that is the Final 7 challenge, where I stayed behind to form a social bond with Letty. And okay, so I was reading that. To form a social bond with Letty, and I thought it was a great social move. But eventually she turns her back on me literally, 5 minutes into the episode. So it's like Letty wants me to turn on the family, but you don't show that you have my back for me to do that. So I was willing to turn on the family if I had an alliance to go to. And I felt like 5 was a good point because at 4, from the challenge last year, that was a lot of luck with the case and being able to be not the last one back, and then also having one of the higher values. So
okay. And then I guess our last question, because we are unfortunately short on time, but we'd love to have you back and talk more if you want to. Yeah, obviously you seem like you are a huge fan of like these shows. So this is kind of like a 2-parter. So one, if you could play anything else, would you? And what would that be? And just a quick fun question is the bracelets. What's going on with all that? The Letty bracelets and everything. We want to ask about that.
So
I would say it was a very cute, almost cruel move, Dickson.
It would have been a cruel move.
What was up that?
It was a cruel move. And actually, give me a second really quick. I got the bracelet in my room right now. Like, let me go get it. She gave me one too. I know where it is. It's somewhere over here.
I'm shook.
Wait 1 second. I got it right here. She gave me a bracelet too. It's right here. And it says, Chicks Dig Dickson is what the bracelet says. But she gave me one too.
Accurate.
And, I think it would have been a very cruel move, but we've shown that I cut Storm and I was close with him. And that move was for 2 reasons. A, because it gave me another avenue if I was ready, another path where if I was willing to turn on Parvati and David, I could go to Letty's side. But it also, I wanted to get back at Letty for turning on me in the final 7. You know, I put my game out there. I take the L and I say, okay, I'll go back. You know, I'm one of the weaker players here. And then she turned around and threw me under the bus. So, and then to answer your second question, Isaiah, I would love to do another show. I would love to do Big Brother. That's the show that I've watched the most, and I've been telling people since I was in high school that I would win Big Brother. So hopefully, I can, you know, put that into the atmosphere and it comes true. Kind of, you know, prophesize it a little bit. But I also want to show people that I can win a game or I can play well in a game without David and Parvati. I know a lot of people. You know, I read a lot of comments saying that. I was riding their coattails. I didn't deserve to be casted because I was just doing whatever they told me to do. And it's like, you know, it's the same situation with Dr. Will. If I would have taken out CK instead of Dr. Will, people would be saying I'm a pawn for Dr. Will. It's like me taking out Storm was my own move in the game. And I had a lot of other moves that it didn't highlight. The friendship bracelet blindside, that was my move. You know, I mean, I will say I did get inspiration from Parvati in the sense of her doing the Eric thing where she got individual immunity from Eric and gave it to Natalie. But that was my move in the game. You know, I want to show people though that I can play a game and I can be a top player without, you know, without Parvati and David. So
All right. Listen, to do a little comparison, you reminded me of Ian Terry from Big Brother. So I think you did a great job. You should be proud of your game. But we do not have any more time. So we are going to end it here, Dickson, but we love to talk to you again in the future. Thank you so much for coming. And yeah, shout out to you.
Definitely. Thank you guys so much again for having me. And I will say, you know, this was a pleasure. I want to ask Julia a question when we get off air. So has nothing to do with the show. It's just a random question.
All right. Have a good one.
Are we